So what are you going to make for us today here?
Okay, I'm going to make the traditional round soda loaf. It's what I grew up with, so it's for nostalgic reasons as much as anything else. But in my eyes, this is what a traditional soda bread is. So I'm going to just start by weighing up my ingredients. I have some white flour. I'm putting 150 grams in. And again, there's so many recipes out there, but this is one that I found works for me, and it's what I like.
Okay.
So I'm going to...
White flour to begin with.
White flour, 150 grams to begin with. I'm going to sieve the white flour just to make sure there's no lumps in it. But obviously we won't need to sieve the brown flour when we add that in. But I'll add the white flour in first.
Okay.
Now,
it's a while since we've had anyone preparing food in studio. Back in the days when Mark Doe used to do a regular cookery
Mark
slot.
is great. I always enjoyed Mark's shows.
Now, what have you got there?
I'm now putting in my 350 grams of my wholemeal flour.
Coarse wholemeal flour.
Wholemeal flour, yeah.
Okay, and again, that's not very expensive. Super value. Yeah,
it's not. Okay. So
and you don't need to sieve that.
No.
Straight in. Yeah. Okay. So far, so good.
So far, so good. And I haven't made a mess of your studio yet. Deirdre. Now I'm going to add just a pinch of salt. I always tend to put it into my hand first, just in case it comes out too fast, or because if it goes in, it can't come out. But at least if you have it in your hand, you can put it into a separate container.
Salt, yeah.
And then I'm going to add a teaspoon of bread soda. And I will sieve the bread soda as well.
What does the bread soda do? Does that make it rise, is it?
Exactly. The bread soda will react with the buttermilk, which causes to go back to my food science classes, the carbon dioxide little bubbles, and that's what makes the bread rise. But it has to react with the buttermilk.
Okay. So next up, it's the buttermilk.
Next up is the buttermilk. So I'm going to sieve. I've just sieved in my bread soda in there, and I'll just mix it with my hand just to make sure we don't want to have any little bits of bread soda on its own, because it doesn't taste.
Is it true that people with cold hands make good bakers? Or is that a myth?
It probably cold definitely works for pastry. Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And do you ever use gloves or anything? Just use your hands?
I always use my hands. If your hands are clean, you don't get the same feel. You have to know. I believe you have to know what you're working with.
Yeah.
And the gloves just don't. We would have tried from a hygiene point of view, but like we'd wash our hands every
once your
time.
hands are clean.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how much buttermilk?
Now, I've after forgetting my measuring jug, but it's 400 mils of buttermilk.
Okay.
And I have an egg here. You don't have to put an egg in, but I think it makes the bread a little bit richer. So ideally,
one egg.
Ideally, I would mix my buttermilk and my egg together. But as I said, I'm after coming away now without my measuring jug, so
you'd have a fair idea.
I'll have a good idea.
How many mils of
400
mils?
Yeah, I have it written out on a recipe anyway for you, Deirdre.
Fantastic. I'll be trying this at home myself now. I love baking.
Do you?
I'm not very good at it though. I've only made bread once. It's cupcakes I make.
Oh well, you could come back to Leaf Larder, Deirdre, and when I need a day off, I know who I'll be ringing.
I wouldn't go that far now. I might poison the people of Killorglin. Okay, so that looks very sticky.
Yeah, and I'm just mixing it just to make sure I get all my flour.
Okay. So give it a good mix with your hands. Yeah. Okay.
You see the way I'm drawing it in from the outside of the bowl into the centre.
Mm-hmm.
This helps me form the shape that I'll want it to be as well.
So you mix it from the outside into the centre. I see you're kind of rolling the bowl around.
Exactly.
Okay.
Turning it with one hand, guiding, and then just using your other hand for the... Okay, so now I'm going to just... I hope you're not going to make me hoover up afterwards, Deirdre.
No. Oh yeah, you're just going to
I'm just
put
going
that down
a little
flat there
bit.
now. Yeah. Okay. And tip it out.
Yeah.
We
So
won't tell Trevor, our engineer, that there's baking going on in his precious studio, or we'll never hear the
and
end
you
of
see
it.
how the bowl is nice and clean?
Oh yes, because you've got all the sticky bits from around
Exactly.
the inside. Yeah.
So now my hands are a little bit still sticky, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit of flour.
Very
and
good.
Use my clean hand.
So you add an egg, but if you were baking at home spontaneously, you didn't have an egg, it's not absolutely necessary.
Absolutely. Also, with this bread, you can really vary it. You can add mixed seeds, you can add pumpkin seeds, you could add cheese and onion. There's so many different ways to
Spice it up. Yeah.
Exactly.
And of course, pumpkin seeds and seeds generally are very healthy, aren't they? They're
For
great
sure.
for digestion and that, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'd be tempted now to throw in a few seeds.
Yes.
And what did you say? Cheese and what else?
Cheese and onion. You could make it a cheese and onion one for a savoury.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to TJ there, because he would sometimes do a bit of baking at home.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be more for cooking, but every now and again he'd make the brown soda and he'd put some cheese and stuff into it.
So just to describe to the listeners, you don't use a rolling pin, no, you just use your hands.
I always use my hands.
Really?
Yeah, for bread, yeah. I don't use the rolling pin.
Okay, so you've got it into a nice. How would you describe the thickness of it there?
I would
it's about
say
an
that's
inch, is it?
probably an inch and a half.
An inch
would
and a
it be?
half. Yeah. Okay, and it's a nice round shape, and you've put a crisscross with a knife.
I have a crisscross, and again, I had to search why, because my mother always made a cross on her bread, but it was actually old tradition times. It's to ward off fairies and kind of bad spirits.
Stop.
Supposedly, yeah.
Oh my God, pishoggery.
Yeah. So it is a nice little story, and I wouldn't have known that. I actually would have thought. I was thinking scientifically that it was to make sure maybe that the bread rose evenly, but no.
But no, really,
No.
it's just an old Irish tradition. So if you never put the cross in it, it would turn out just as
Probably
fine.
would, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting now. Very
Yeah.
interesting. So it's ready to go.
You're ready to go.
And what do you preheat to?
I would preheat the oven to 200 degrees. It
Okay.
does need a nice hot oven, and for this size of a loaf, approximately 40 minutes.
And is that a fan-assisted oven?
A fan-assisted oven, yeah.
200 degrees. It's remarkably simple and very few ingredients, really.
Very few, cheap to produce too, affordable, fresh, no additives, no chemicals in it. And it's like you could also, if you were very organised, you could have your ingredients weighed up the night before, all in the bowl, just ready for mixing in the morning.
Yeah, and how long in the oven?
About 40 minutes.
40 minutes at
roughly.
200. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you need to do anything to it during the baking process?
No.
Just leave it.
Leave it
And
alone.
what would you put it on?
I'd put it on a baking tray, yeah, just with a tiny bit of flour again, just so that it doesn't stick.
Okay.
That's it.
So obviously we don't have an oven here in Radio Kerry, but you've brought us in. You might just bring around there for the benefit of the camera, the one you made earlier.
Yeah.
Now that looks absolutely gorgeous. And that's your traditional Irish soda bread.
Traditional Irish soda bread.
Yeah, lovely. Looks gorgeous. Sit down there now till I ask you a few more quick questions. Selena, so if you were to add cheese and onion to it, is that what you said? Would it be raw onion? And what point would you...
You could possibly saute. I would probably suggest that you'd saute it, yeah.
And at what point in the baking process would you put the onion in?
When you're adding your milk.
When you're adding the milk. And what kind of cheese then?
I would go for a nice mature cheddar.
Shredded, or what you call it, grated?
Yeah, grated.
And throw that in around the same
time.
time.
Throw that in as well. And you could sprinkle some on the top as well, just for...
Before it goes into the oven?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and you could put the seeds in as well to make it healthier. Any other variations of it?
You could put a spoon of treacle in as well, and it kind of enriches it and would give it a darker colour.
Okay.
Yeah, there's so many variations. You could do orange and cardamom. So anything really, anything that you fancy.
What's your own favourite?
Probably just the plain.
The plain soda
with
bread.
a layer of lovely Kerrygold butter.
And if you fancy a big dollop of jam as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's a good seller in Killorglin.
It is a good seller in Killorglin, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I think that's you can't really go wrong with that, and I'm sure the listeners out there will have soda bread recipes of their own. And what would be your number one baking tip? I know that a lot of people just put a fist of this and a cup of that, but you were very exact about the measurements.
And that would be my number one baking tip. Weigh your recipes exactly. There is a science, there is a reason why it's a teaspoon of this and a teaspoon of that. You know, it's different with cooking. You can be a little bit more adding, but there is a science in baking. And Anne Shine was my food science lecturer in Tralee back all those years ago, and she was an excellent lecturer really, and she would have really stressed the importance of the weighing and the proper quantities.
Fantastic. Well, it looks delicious. Selena from Leaf and Larder, thank you for coming in and showing us your lovely brown bread recipe.
Thanks for having us.
And now we leave it up to the listeners, and tell me what you put in your brown bread and share your recipes with us, and what are your thoughts on baking and your top tips for baking brown bread. We would love to hear from you.